So, you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So, you want to be a dungeon master.
That's great. We're here to help. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Justin. This week, we're going over one of the exciting new mechanics that D&D 2024 stole from Baldur's yeah, they did. Weapon masteries. What are they? Who gets them? And are they overpowered towards the players? Let's discuss this exciting new mechanic discussed in the 2024 Player's Handbook. But first...
What's
going to be my first? When this episode comes out, you will only have a couple more days to vote for Mythos University for Best Series for a Crit Award. So, please head over to critawards.org. And when you get to the Best Series, Best Actual Play Series, vote for Mythos University, presented by Soyouwannabeadm. It would mean the world to us to win this award.
Yeah, it really would. It really would. I mean, honestly, just being nominated is an honor, but to win it,
it would be pretty sick. And so let's talk a little bit about the DM setup that I had to go through for that season and kind of how it came to be. So the first thing was getting the cast together and all that kind of stuff. We go over session 0. That's normal. I explain to all the players the gist of what we're trying to do, and we start coming up with characters. I let everyone know right off the bat, hey, accuracy is not the name of the game. There are some Greek myths out there, and if you follow the family tree from Zeus and all those others, it's fucked up. It's crazy.
It sure is.
There's a lot of things that we're just not going to even get into, or we're going to just actively remove from those stories. And then it became down to creating some relationships between the characters.
Yep.
And talking one-on-one with players. So what I did was I reached out to each player individually to get a little bit more information on who they wanted their character to be, and also how I can connect them to the world, to this campus that also has Greek mythology running throughout it. And so some of those questions were really simple, like, here's a list of professors that probably it would make sense that your character would take their classes for one reason or another. Pick one that you want to be especially close with. Or here's a list of NPCs. Pick one, and we'll say that you're extra close with that one. Just so that there's other things, you know?
Yeah, during the session 0, pretty quickly, Daniel and I decided to be roommates. I feel like it always winds up happening of Daniel would be like, hey, Taylor, you want to do this bit with me? Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in.
100%. Yeah. Usually if Daniel Hargrove asks you something, it's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's probably a good idea. And some of those questions, I had this idea, and when you watch the show, it becomes pretty apparent. I had this idea to do something with Achilles. I knew Achilles would be a pivotal role as an NPC, not in a villain way, but in a way that is connected to the plot. And so I need to connect Achilles to the characters. I need them to care about Achilles at least a little bit, or some type of emotional investment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked like 3 or 4 different players, hey, what's your relationship like with Achilles? He's going to be a character in this. He's like a senior. Here's his deal, kind of jock behavior, What's your character's relationship with them? It could just be a friend. It could be ex. It could be current, like, relationship status. It could be mentor. It could be anything, you know? And what that resulted in was multiple people saying that they had either currently or previously romantic relations with Achilles. And instead of being like, okay, well, I can't have all of you dating Achilles at the same time, I said,
yes,
what if you are, because Achilles is a piece of shit? And we're not talking about like a polyamorous relationship right here, which with consent and its own discussions and communication, you know, you do you. That's not what this was, though. This was straight up cheating and like a typical dude being a douchebag. But none of the players know about it because I didn't tell all of the players, hey, I'm going to be questioning all of you on Achilles. It was like privately.
It's so funny. And just watch the players realize what's going on during the course of the first session. Oh my God.
Yeah. As soon as
So
the first
funny.
player's like, yeah, so Achilles and me broke up. You could see it on the other players' faces like, wait, you also? No. What? And so that was really fun. And then similarly, I am like, it's so interesting with actual plays because ideally I'm friends and I'm pretty close with everybody that we have at our tables, right? But sometimes we've only played a one shot together. So I might be like friendly, but I wouldn't necessarily say that there's like years of trust built up or something like that, right? So I always like to err on the side of caution when it comes to surprises, especially surprises that deal with somebody's player character. Like, I don't want to just pull the rug out from somebody and be like, actually, your dad is the villain the whole time. And then, like, what if that pisses them off? Especially because at this time we were performing live on Twitch. So it really was like, I want there to be surprises. I like surprising the players and stuff, but I also don't want to do it at the expense of somebody's fun. So let me just hedge my bets. And what I'll do is I'll message a couple people and I'll pretty much get permission to induce trauma is kind of the vibe, is really what happened. I messaged both you and another player, and maybe other players, maybe not. And I said, hey, how would you feel if this happened? And then I made up a little bit of a fib and I said, I'm asking everybody the same question, so don't even think about it too much. But I am asking everybody, but how would you specifically feel if somebody closely related to you ended up being the villain, blah, blah, blah. And in reality, I only asked the people who that would apply to.
Right.
Both of them were okay with it. And that's what ended up happening. Same as the public domains with an idea that I had early on about Christopher Robin and Paul Bunyan and stuff. And I was like, hey, I got to ask the player who's playing Winnie the Pooh if it's okay. Because I just want to be sure, you know? It's such an interesting thing, right? Because it's like, there's a world where I maybe didn't ask your guys' permission and maybe it would have been fine. But that also means that there is a possibility of a world where I don't ask for permission, I do the surprise, and people are upset. And people aren't having fun.
Yeah.
And then, was my surprise
But the way you went about
it?
Yeah, I mean, the way you went about it was good in keeping with the surprise and also checking with your players.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I think it really comes down to, is just there's ways to bring up surprises without detailing every part of the surprise, you know? I didn't tell them explicitly what was happening or who was involved. It was more like, hey, is it okay if somebody close to your character ends up being a villain? That can mean anything. That can mean friend. That can mean family member. That can mean, you know, whatever. So, yeah, I just think it's better to be safe than sorry kind of thing, you know? But that all led to a really fun game for Mythos University. I highly recommend checking it out. It's available in its entirety the first season on our YouTube and on our podcast. So you can get access. Obviously, the podcast, presumably you're here listening to the podcast now. You could just scroll down and go to those episodes. But also, you can get access on our YouTube, available in the link in the description. And I highly recommend checking it out and giving us a vote. critawards.org, Mythos University, nominated for Best Actual Play Series. Thank you so much. But let's get into the meat of the episode.
Thank you. Let's get into this, because this is kind of...
Hey gang, we wanted to talk to you about something pretty important real quick. See, we have some really cool ideas for the future, but we need your help. You can do that by supporting us through our Patreon. At the lowest tier, you get early access to podcast episodes, access to episodes of Action Surge, our post-session table talk show, and entry into a private channel on our Discord server. At the next tier, you can get access to Bonus Action, our bonus content podcast where we talk about a huge variety of D&D and TTRPG related things, like multi-class mystery mashup, where we get 2 random classes and have to build a character, or Monster Matchmaker, where we go over our favorite monsters at each CR level, or recaps of our home campaign, plus so much more. Joining the Patreon helps us continue to grow and put out content that gets better and better as we learn, improve, and try new things. So, check out the link in the description to join the gang today.
Kind of meaty.
There's a
Little bit of
decent
a
amount
meaty topic
here. But let's start with, what is a weapon mastery?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way it's in the book is each weapon has a mastery property, which is usable only by a character who has a feature such as weapon mastery that unlocks a property for the character. Basically, there are different abilities that different types of weapons have to kind of affect how they're used in addition to their normal attacking ability.
Mm-hmm.
So cleave basically allows you to cut through something and then also deal damage to something else within 5 feet. I think you have to roll another attack. Yes, you do. So it'd be 2 attack rolls basically, but whatever, that damage is, that second creature will also take it, minus your ability modifier. Basically, it's like a poor man's 2-weapon fighting, or attacking with an offhand weapon type of deal.
Kind of, yeah, except it's all just part of that one attack. You're not using a bonus action or anything. It's just part of that first attack. Yeah, I mean, it's like you have your great axe and there are 2 people standing right next to each other. You make a big swing. Presumably, you're going to hit the second one too.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit less damage. You don't add the ability modifier because presumably that first body took most of the brunt.
Right.
So by the time it gets to the second body, it's already lost a little momentum. And that's cleave. Next up, we have graze. If your attack roll with this weapon misses a creature, hey, you can deal damage to that creature equal to the ability modifier that you use to make the attack roll. The damage is the same type dealt by the weapon, and the damage can be increased only by increasing the ability modifier. So yeah,
I see this pairing very well with like a fine wine, like a sommelier of adding feats to complement other feats. Mage Slayer with this feat would be low-key kind of devastating.
Oh yeah, that's always so true. Because you're always doing damage. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, that's so true. It's really interesting how you can combine these with other abilities depending on the class and style of what you're trying to go for. It really is can be crazy. It can be absolutely nuts. And this is an interesting one too because it doesn't specify for how many times you can do this one.
Correct.
Do it as many times as you want. Every single attack
cleave,
you miss.
It specifically says for cleave. Yeah. It specifically says on cleave that you can only do it once per turn. There's no such delineation in the Gray's spell text.
Exactly. Yeah. So pretty gnarly.
The next one is going to be Nick. When you make your extra attack with a weapon of the light property, you can make it as part of your attack action instead of as a bonus action. And you can only do this once per turn. So this is basically like I was just talking about with that offhanded light weapon, trying to do an extra attack that way as a bonus action. You can now just basically tack that onto your normal attack action,
freeing up your bonus action.
And then I'm assuming you can then also follow that up with, you can only do this once per turn, but you can still take your bonus action attack too.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can.
I think Daniel did that in one of his actual plays where it was like,
Oh man.
he did like 6 attacks in one turn.
Yeah. Yeah, 6 attacks in one turn at like level 5, I think, as a fighter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But that does include action surge, which some people
Correct.
were getting confused because there were people in the comments of that video. I felt bad for Daniel. I was like, dang dog, this is nuts. Because he had to explain to people that like, no, action surge means you get both of your attacks. Like if you have 2 attacks, action surge, you get 2 more attacks. It's not just 1 extra. This isn't haste. Like that was crazy. I was like, oh man, I'm, obviously at So You Want to Be a DM, we're big proponents and like, you don't need to know all of the rules. And that's true, but also don't be super loud in someone's comment section unless you know the rules, maybe.
Right.
Maybe be a little quieter and put on your listening ears. But yeah, Nick is a really fucking good one. Then we have Push. This one's also absolutely fucking bananas because there's no saving throw to speak of. If you hit a creature, if you hit, God, Justin, pull it together. If you hit a creature, I'm going to start talking like over enunciating. If you hit a creature with this weapon, you can push the creature up to 10 feet straight away from yourself if it is large or smaller. So a 10 feet push if you hit the creature with the weapon. Bonkers.
That's, yeah.
You hit,
I love
boom,
pushing
10
people
feet.
around.
Now, here's the nice thing. It says you can push. So you can choose not to push
Yes.
if you so chose.
Yes.
Like if you already used all your movement and you're like, well, I get 2 attacks. I'm not going to push him on the first attack because then now I can't hit him. Push him on the second attack, And this is another one that does not say once per turn.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. It is so crazy.
I mean, depending on what class you're going with, I mean, that's like,
dude.
Oh my god.
And we're going to get into all the classes, subclasses, who gets weapon mastery is what we're going to go over next. Because to me, I think that's where they dropped the ball a little bit. But we'll get into it then.
Okay. The next actual mastery is Sap. When you hit a creature with this weapon, that creature has disadvantage on its next attack roll before the start of your next turn. That's pretty good. I think a lot of these are on like daggers and stuff.
We're gonna go over that too, but yeah,
weapons,
it's all over the place. That one's another really fucking good one. It's really specific to attack rolls, which actually makes it not as OP. It's just it kind of becomes pretty balanced actually because it's just on 1 attack roll and it's only attack rolls. There's a chance that the monster doesn't use attack rolls, but the next one after that is Slow. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to it, you can reduce its speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. If the creature is hit more than once by weapons that have this property, the speed reduction does not exceed 10 feet.
Boo.
Boo.
You
can't just have a party of players who all get weapons that slow.
Boo.
No,
I want to break it.
This is fine.
I want to break it. You'd have to start throwing just all monks in just to be able to clear the goddamn speed reduction.
I know, it would be insane. Be like, actually, everyone has teleport, so fuck you.
Yeah, so that's just fun.
It is that one is interesting only in the sense that it is the wording of all of these is so important. I think that's really important for the players to understand and the GMs to also get a handle on because the wording is so specific. Like Cleave, you can only do this extra attack once per turn. Nick also has that thing. Slow has an interesting thing where it says if you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to it.
Right.
So if for some reason you hit, but this creature is immune to slashing or whatever the fuck, it doesn't work. You cannot slow if you're not dealing damage also.
Right.
So pay attention.
Pay attention. Topple. This one actually comes with a a saving throw on it.
Mm.
So topple is if you hit a creature with the weapon, you can force the creature to make a Constitution saving throw. Odd save, but okay. It's a DC 8 plus the ability modifier you use to make the attack roll and your proficiency bonus. So normal DC calculation, like save DC calculation here. The only difference being you're going to be using, if you're doing like a dex weapon, it's going to be using your dex. If you're using a strength weapon, it's going to be using your strength. And then on a failed save, the creature goes prone.
Yeah. And you can do that as many times as you want, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting thing is that and I only know this because I'm playing, I have an idea for a 2024 character that I'm building. It says the DC is 8 plus the ability modifier that you used to make the attack roll.
Oh, you tricky fuck.
Because if I'm using Pact of the Blade and Charisma is the ability that I use, then it's not saving DC. So,
damn.
Just as a heads up. I also want to break it sometimes. And so, the last one is Vex. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to the creature, you have advantage on your next attack roll against the creature before the end of your current turn.
Next turn.
Fuck. Before
end
the
of your next turn.
End of your next turn. Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, talk about setting yourself up for the wombos. I mean, multi-attack or, extra attack. And get them with it on the first one. Then also there's no indication that you can only do this once per turn, so you can also do it with your second attack, and then that will apply to your and that will apply to your first attack on the next turn.
Yeah.
And you're just perpetually giving yourself advantage. I love that.
I don't. I think it's overpowered. I think most of these are overpowered is how I feel about it.
They are pretty broken. I'm not going to lie to you there.
Because it would be different if more of them said you can only do this once per turn, then I'd be more down for it. But because literally only 2 of them do, I think. It's like, what is this, man? Now, obviously, there's all different kinds of reasons that not every character is going to use a Vex weapon, even if it is really fun to get advantage on almost every single attack you do. Literally overpowered, but okay. But Vex doesn't apply to every weapon. It only applies to some weapons. So we all have to get into that. And the other thing is, not everybody gets weapon masteries.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to go over next is who gets weapon masteries and how many do they get? How do they work? So, first off, we start with the Barbarian. Obviously, for the classes here, there will be in alphabetical order. The Barbarian gets 2 weapon masteries.
Okay.
And that's it. Now, you can switch those out on a long rest usually, and that's true for all of these. But you get 2. So you wake up that morning, you say, today I'll probably use my great axe and maybe, I don't know, a javelin, for the sake of throwing. Then we just observe our little table here. We go find great axe. We find out that great axe is, cleave. Okay, we're also doing the javelin. Javelin got slow. Those are our 2 things. That's what we get.
Hell yeah.
And then if you're like, oh, but the Vex one is so cool. I really, really want the Vex one.
And this is...
Well, it's like...
per weapon, right? You're not picking Vex and then you can do any weapon that has Vex. It's got to be the specific...
No, it has to be the specific weapon, which is what I'm saying. Yeah, okay. So if you're playing the Barbarian and you're like, man, I really want to use Vex. Well, then you better pick up a short sword. Or a rapier. Or a dart.
Short bow would do it.
Short bow. But you're using dex for that, so hopefully your dex is decent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like there is a little balance in that because presumably players aren't going to be sacrificing that much just to get the cool advantage ability.
Right.
Because it's like, does it really make sense? You could be using strength. Not to mention the Barbarian base class, if we covered in that episode, really wants you to use your fucking reckless attack. Which gives you the advantage, so it would be interesting for you to find ways not to use it. But that's the Barbarian getting 2. The Fighter gets 3.
Nice.
Paladin, Ranger, Rogue all get 2. and that's it.
Okay.
It's just
I
those
mean,
5 classes, which
yeah.
I'm fine with. That's not where I think they dropped the ball.
Yeah.
It's not in the classes. The base classes, I think they got it right. These are the ones. That makes sense, right? What else would you add to this? Maybe Monk, I think.
I would definitely add Monk.
I think there's an argument to be made for Monk getting even 1 would be better than 0.
Yeah, no, because I mean, if as a monk, you do get a monk weapon of some sort. I think that whatever your monk weapon is, that mastery should apply to that weapon.
I agree.
So whether it's a short sword or any simple weapon or what have you.
You know what they don't add to this list, and I think it's a huge mistake? I wish that unarmed strikes could get some sort of weapon mastery ability.
That would be fun too.
I don't know if any of the ones that are currently here necessarily make sense. Maybe topple for like a kick sweep attack, right? Like that does sort of fit.
Slow would kind of make sense. You give a dead leg.
Yeah, there's like ways you could fit these in here.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, there's also a world where maybe you just make a new one for the sake of punching somebody in the neck.
Sap,
but like
pocket sand.
But I do think that's interesting that unarmed strike is like a very prominent thing that happens in D&D. Not even just for monks, for other characters too.
No.
But for some reason it's like, no, you're not a specialist in that. And it's like, I'm a monk. I literally am. What are you talking about? So I thought that was interesting. The thing that really bugs me about weapon masteries with the 2024 system, no subclasses get a weapon mastery. Thus far, let me be really specific. At the time of recording this, in fucking June of 2025, no subclasses.
So you're talking like
mastery.
If you want to be like a swords bard, you should be able to get it.
Correct.
Okay.
If I'm a Kensei monk, I should be able to get one.
Yeah.
Especially a Kensei monk.
I agree with that.
That's my point.
You know what?
A blade singer wizard?
Forget it.
I don't get one?
Uh-huh.
What the fuck are we talking about? Like, that's crazy. I'm a cleric who's specifically choosing to be in the front line. I'm going all of the paths to get martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor and all this stuff. You can't give me a single weapon mastery? Yeah. Get the fuck out of here with that. I think that's crazy. And so that's my big beef, is like the fact that the only way, if you're not playing a barbarian, a fighter, a paladin, a ranger, or a rogue, and wasting a level of multi-class to get into that thing to get this weapon mastery, because you could. All of these get it right at level 1, pretty much.
Right.
So you could, but it's annoying that you have to. Just like it's annoying that unless you do that, the only other way to get a weapon mastery in the entire game is to wait until you're level 4 and to burn your feet on it.
I was just going to use that exact same wording because it really does feel like you're just burning it, wasting it on this weapon mastery thing.
Yeah, it sucks because, yes, it gives you a weapon mastery, which is dope. You're going to use that for the rest of the game. That's really exciting. Even having one is huge because you can change it out every long rest if you needed to, but most of the time you probably won't. But okay, at least you have the option. Here's the thing. It gives you it's because of 2024's changes with feats, like it's still one of those like half feats where it's still going to give you a +1 to one of your abilities. But the weapon mastery one gives you a +1 to like strength or dex, and that's it. Well, hey, I'm Pact of the Blade. I don't need a +1 to my strength or dex. I'm fucking good on that.
Right.
I'd rather get the Warcaster one because at least then I can make my charisma even higher. That gives me a million other benefits. It's going to change how my weapons hit anyway because I'm Pact of the Blade again. And so the idea that I just have to burn a feat just to get this one little tiny thing that so many other characters can get and use ad nauseum, like it bugs me.
That's fair. It bugs me too.
It bugs me.
I'm with you on that. I think that if we ever do wind up making that jump to 2024, I'd give a monk a weapon mastery. I think one single weapon mastery, even for the subclasses of like we were just talking about, of like swords bard or blade singer wizard or something like that. You don't have to give them a whole bunch like the fighter. I'm not saying give them 3, but one would be nice.
Even one. just as part of the subclass. I don't understand how
Right.
hard that is. There's so many of those subclasses, like the Valor or Swords Bard or whatever, where as soon as you get that subclass, you become proficient in medium armor and shields and martial weapons. Why not just add in there and you get one weapon mastery?
One weapon mastery.
That's fine. I don't think that that's that groundbreaking. Is it that crazy to give a full spellcaster a thing?
It could be a stepping on toes thing of, the fighters, only have a few things. Most of their level up stuff is all action or ability scores and feats and stuff like that.
Right.
But now they have another thing of, hey, we can also do weapon masteries. So
That's
I can kind of
true.
see it as like a stepping on toes kind of a situation, but I don't think any of these are so game breaking that everybody in the group having one of these is not going to break it.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm curious to see how this plays out. This weapon masteries to me feels like a power gamer's playground. Like it's written so poorly
very true.
in the fact that it feels rushed. It feels like they rushed it and they were like, oh, well, yeah, certainly you can't cleave every time. That's crazy. Put something in there. And Nick also. And then the other ones, we don't have time. Let's just force them through. And it's like, whoa, buddy. Like, you don't understand that
ship it.
there is going to be a community out here that is going to fucking murder and exploit the shit out of these. Which is why I imagine Larian Studios was like, hey, listen, we're going to let anybody who's, as long as you're proficient with the weapon, you get the fucking thing. But it's once per short rest. Or a long rest or whatever. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've played Baldur's Gate. But
yeah, I mean, that seems to me like a lot less fun, though. I like being able to use them ad nauseum. I do think that maybe once per turn on most of these would be a better idea.
Yeah.
But once per short rest is just not enough.
No, and I agree. They also give you more than one, like some of those weapons you pick up and it gives you like 3 different things you could do. So it makes way more sense. And it's open to any character who's proficient. So it kind of, in that sense, I can understand it. Not to mention the way Baldur's Gate is just inherently different than D&D. Yeah. Because you can just like put that weapon away and pick out a different weapon and then you can use that weapon's properties. So it's like, whatever. But I agree. I think, I don't know. I guess I'm a little nervous that this is just kind of pushing the goalpost down the line a little bit when it comes to fighters and stuff. It's because it's like you have more stuff to do. But if you're really just doing the same thing every turn, isn't that exactly what fighters used to complain about? Is that you're doing the same thing every turn? So now, yeah, you're doing the same thing, but I guess it's more things. So is that better? Or is it kind of just the same fucking thing? Like, I don't really know.
Right.
I have fun playing fighters as is. In 2014, I have fun playing a fighter. I also am a very creative and roleplay heavy person, though. So for me, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't know. So I thought those things were interesting. So now I guess we can go through really quickly. I'll handle the simple weapons if you want to handle some of the martial weapons of which weapons do what.
Right.
So starting with simple melee weapons, your club is going to slow. Your dagger is going to nick. Your great club, that's a push. Hand axe, vex. Javelin, slow. Light hammer, nick. Mace, sap. Quarterstaff topples. I don't know if we need to go over every single one, actually. I think, hey, there's a whole table for this, and you could probably Google it.
There is. Yeah.
There's a whole table for this in the book, and you could probably just Google it, and you can see exactly which weapon mastery is associated with which weapon. I think that there's a part of this that I really enjoyed. I like that they made the weapons feel more different in this way. I think that was a win.
Yeah.
Like, good idea, because I've always been complaining about 2014's use of weapons in D&D, because it very much was like, if you're the barbarian, why aren't you using a great axe or a great sword? There's like,
Mhm.
I guess you can use a shield and maybe you want your AC to be a little bit higher, but like it felt like, of course, everybody is going to use the item that can do the most damage given their situation. Right? So
Right.
if you're using a shield and you can only use a one-handed weapon, then you're going to use a long sword or whatever else you can use one-handed that does the most damage, which I think is a D8. If you're going to use two-handed, then you're going to go for the great axe or the great sword unless you're trying to get that extra reach, in which case you'll sacrifice the 1d12 and go down to a 1d10 and you'll use a glaive or a halberd or something.
Right.
But now at least they've added a couple of things where it does make them different. There is a distinct difference now between a warhammer and a war pick, where in the past it was just one is bludgeoning, one is piercing, but it's still a D8 and it's still a D10 if you use it versatile. Like, it didn't matter.
Right.
It was just flavor.
Yeah, but so something that I'm kind of noticing looking at the table here of simple versus martial weapons just in general, some of the quote unquote lesser, I wouldn't even call them lesser, just like a lot of the melee weapons have stuff like Nick and Vex and Slow. Whereas when you get into the martial melee weapons, that's when you're getting into like a bunch of them have topple, a bunch of them have cleave, a bunch of them have graze, sap, a bunch of them have like kind of the harder hitting or multi-hitting types of attacks. Whereas the smaller, kind of more simple weapons don't really have all of that.
Yeah, they're harder to find.
Mm-hmm. But like really the only thing for topple is quarterstaff with simple weapons. But if you go down to the martial weapons, you can use a lance, you can use a maul, you can use a trident, you could use, there was one more, a battle axe. All of those have topple.
Mm-hmm.
None of them on the simple ones have graze or cleave on them.
Yeah. Yeah, they are really,
So,
they seem to have been pretty specific about where they're distributing some of these weapon masteries.
mm-hmm.
Because first it's like you're trying to go from some sort of narrative physics, like where it makes sense. Like there's a reason that the spear isn't a cleaving weapon, right?
Right.
Just from logistics. And then also it's like, okay, we're going to let it have sap, which is pretty powerful because their next attack roll has disadvantage now. Now I think the way that that's written, even though it doesn't explicitly say you can only use this once per turn, I don't think it stacks. There's nothing in there to suggest that it either does or doesn't. So like if you hit creature A, you hit them once, boom. Their next attack roll, disadvantage. Now I hit creature A again with my second attack.
It
I don't
doesn't
think
say that I get another disadvantage attack on that.
Yeah. So in a
And
way, it is
obviously,
kind of
double disadvantage isn't a thing.
right. And it doesn't, it's not, there's no like rule in D&D of like, well, if they have disadvantage on the first one, then that disadvantage rolls over to the second one. Like rollover minutes. Remember those commercials?
Jesus Christ.
Like there's no rules like that. So yeah, I think
Just
it is
caught
interesting.
A picture of myself as my hair turns all straight gray.
But it is interesting. Like weird stuff where like they don't mention that. You just have to kind of figure that out for yourself.
Do you think it's fun that they gave the heavy crossbow the push ability? That's crazy.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. It's hardcore. Heavy crossbow is one of those ones that's crazy because it's like, I've never once in my life played a game of D&D where somebody put any credence into the loading mechanic of a crossbow. That has never come up. Listen, technically, rules as written, loading means that you can take one action. Really, you're taking one attack, really. Even if your character has extra attack, you're taking one attack. Is technically what that means, because you have to load it again. Most of the time, people will take crossbow.
So it's an attack
action
to reload it.
I don't know if it's an attack action. It's just
Not like a whole
the way
attack
that
action, but like
property is written.
You're right.
I don't know if
I
I'm
gotcha.
able to find the D&D ones.
Yeah, it's all right. They can look it up.
You can fire only one piece of ammunition from a loading weapon when you use an action, a bonus action, or a reaction to fire it, regardless of the number of attacks you can normally make.
Okay.
But, I mean, that's like such an easy hand wave thing. Most people are going to hand wave that anyway, because it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't care about stuff like that. But, yeah, there's the ranged weapons also get them. Obviously, the heavy crossbow gets push. Hand crossbow gets vex. Longbow gets slow. They do even have a pistol and a musket on this list if you're interested in those. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's all your normal weapons from 2014. None of the damages have really changed or anything. At least not that I've noticed. Maybe a maul? I don't remember a maul being 2d6.
Yeah.
In 5e. I think a maul was only a d8, maybe a d10 with two hands. I forget if it was even that. No, it was a 2d6. Wow. Why does no one use a maul? That's crazy. Anyway. So now that we've gone over what the weapon masteries are, who gets them, and which weapons get them, talk a little bit about homebrew with weapon masteries. I mean, these are the things that I think of, at least. I'm thinking you can add a new weapon and you can just give it one of these existing weapon masteries. Something to think about if you decide to homebrew a weapon and add it into your game specifically. Whereas in the past, you just kind of, I mean, when I'm homebrewing weapons, unless it's a magic item, I just am taking an item that already exists and I'm just changing the vibe of it, you know?
Right.
So like if I'm adding a kukri or like a really specific weapon, you know what I mean? Then it's like, okay. If I'm adding Kali sticks, I'm just going to find something that's similar and be like, it's this. Right? Like,
yeah.
Whatever. But now I also want to make sure that that makes sense for the weapon mastery also. The other thing is we can homebrew new masteries if we wanted to, you know? And we can add that to existing weapons. We can add it to new weapons that we're adding to the system. The other thing that I think is the most important is taking some subclasses and giving them weapon masteries. I've written down just a few here
absolutely.
that we've already kind of gone over, but examples would be the Kensei Monk, the Swords or the Valor Bard, the Blade Singer Wizard, and tank style clerics. Just to name a few, right? Because, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I think if you're playing any one of these classes and you came to me and you're like, dude, I really want to get weapon mastery, but I don't want to have to take a feat for it, I'd give you at least one. I might give you two, just to be put you on par with
maybe
the
one
other,
at the first,
the other non-fighter classes.
Yeah,
pretty much the fighter gets 3. All the other classes that do get masteries get 2. So
yeah,
I'm okay with giving 2.
Yeah.
For those specific subclasses. If you're going to lore bard, no, it doesn't make sense. Sorry.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the other subclasses not getting them. I'm fine with other classes not getting them right off the bat or anything. The ones that they've given it to make sense. I'm not trying to take it away from them. It's just like, there are some subclasses that are very specifically being like, hey, you're going to be doing a lot of weapon stuff.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. Well, hey, guess what? I'm not a master at weapons. So actually I'm a novice. It's like, okay, well then why are you a sword?
So hold on a second. So I'm a monk that has dedicated his entire life to learning the way of the blade, but I'm not a master?
No, you're only proficient.
I have no weapon mastery with the short sword. Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
It's literally a monk weapon.
It's so silly to me. I think that was such a huge.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Kensei Monk isn't even in. I don't know if they did it in Unearthed Arcana, but it's not even in the 2024 stuff.
Right.
But
right.
Valor Bard is. And so the fact that they didn't give it to that
should have come with
or
it,
any of the clerics, like War Domain Cleric doesn't fucking get it. So what are we doing?
That's BS.
Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't fucking give them a single weapon mastery. It just feels crazy to me. And then last but not least, we also talked about this. I really do wish that Unarmed Strike also had some sort of weapon mastery. I think that would be really cool and fun. Not to mention, it could open up all kinds of things, man. You could do some cool wrestling subclasses, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't know why. The first thing that popped into my head, but like a luchador character, that'd be awesome.
It'd be sick. You're going to be making unarmed strikes and stuff, probably, right?
Hell yeah.
It would be cool to have an unarmed
just
strike.
Make my main thing grapple. Like, just like have like one of those monster abilities where if you hit with this attack, they're grappled.
Yeah. It's like there's so many different ways you could do stuff. Like, I just don't understand. There's a lot of monsters that have an ability where it's like you have to hit with both of your attacks and then they're grappled. It could be like that.
Right.
You know? One hand isn't enough to grapple, but if you hit with two hands, boom, boom, now you're grappling. Now you're in that typical wrestler stance, right? Like,
yeah.
It works out perfectly. So it's just stuff to think about, really. I mean, I'm still fascinated how they added this into the game. And the timing of it is very interesting. That's why at the top I make the joke, except I'm truly not joking. They stole this from Larian Studios.
They did. 1,000% they stole this.
I'd be curious to know if there was any behind the scenes discussion between the two companies.
Yeah.
Because obviously Larian is using D&D stuff, so there has to be some communication. Did Larian get a sneak peek into the 2024 PHB, and that's how they were able to build weapon masters?
Yeah,
like
I'm very interested in the timeline. Yeah, I'm very interested in the timeline of what came first, the chicken or the egg type of situation of...
Yeah, because it's not lost on me that some of these words are used in Baldur's Gate 3. Cleave, topple. I think that's it. The other ones don't really do it. Not by word. There's push.
I think Vex is in there too.
Is Vex?
I think so.
I don't think I've ever seen
I'd have to double check.
I mean, I haven't played a lot since the updates, so I don't even really know the newest patches. But yeah, it's just like I also think that weapon masteries present an issue for some DMs when you have a table that is mixing and matching 2014 and 2024. If you have players at the game who are using 2024, and then you have other players at the game who are using 2014, weapon masteries can make like things unbalanced. So I think it's important to like just take the extra bit of time and be like, hey, bud, I know you want to play a 2014 rogue, but take this. Like, just add this onto your character. It's very easy to do. Yeah. It's not a hard thing. It's just something you have to be mindful of, because Daniel K. Hargrove is making 6 fucking attacks at level 5, and if you're not using weapon masteries, you don't get to make 6 attacks. So it's like, that's unfair. It's not Daniel's fault, but that's unfair to the players who aren't taking those advantages, right? Like, it does create an imbalance that I think needs to be addressed. Which is why mixing the two systems is interesting. It's always going to be a little bit of a headache because things were designed with the new stuff in mind. It's why like some characters are going to build their shit around the fact that counterspell forces a saving throw.
A saving throw now, yeah.
So like that's different than in the past, because in 2024 a sorcerer can use heightened spell, and that's that counterspell that the saving throw, now it's at disadvantage. But that's not even a thing that you would do in 2014. So it just changes things a little bit. And it's like, whoa. It's been an interesting challenge, I think. Not in a bad way, but just an interesting challenge having some players use 2024 and some players use 2014 stuff at a table has been interesting, to say the least. Because there are like little things here and there where you're like, whoa, okay, they added that ability in there. That's bonkers. Like, whoa. Like sorcerers just being able to use like a little bonus action thing and then they beef up and now all of their spell attack rolls are at advantage. What are we talking about? Do players need advantage on everything? That's what I don't like about 2024. It almost to me feels like everything is just too easy. Like it just feels like we just made everything a little bit easier. And it was just like, I don't understand playing a game that bases around dice if you're not down for when the dice roll bad. Like that's just part of the system. This is me, Justin, talking from the heart a little bit and kind of venting. So maybe not from the heart, but maybe from the gut. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, now in 2024, I get advantage on every single roll. I get all this stuff, all these bonuses and all these different abilities where, hey, if it doesn't succeed, I still keep the ability and all this different stuff. And it's like, are we just, I'm going to sound like a fucking boomer, but it feels like we're just raising infants, like little babies who just can't handle failure. And that's my piece, dog. Am I crazy? Am I alone in this?
No, you're not. Yeah, you're not. You're not. I do love being a part of that power fantasy, but there's definitely also stories to be told of the low rolling dice. And I think that you're right in that this takes away a lot of the risk of that.
Mm-hmm.
Of always being able to give yourself advantage and always being able to put your enemies at disadvantage on counterspell and all of that other stuff. That kind of it is a way of doing, of like making it easier to not fail. But I think, I don't know, part of it comes down to like build your players better. I don't know. As a perpetual power gamer from day one, it's hard to imagine putting myself in a situation where I'm not at least 80% confident I'm going to make it work no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Like,
and then this just puts it to like 95% now.
I know. And that's my thing is like, listen, if you're playing with players who aren't necessarily, I don't even really care about the power gamer min-maxer idea, but like there are players out there who are seeking to exploit every single misstep that Wizards of the Coast puts out. Anytime they forget to put a comma or they forget to put thing or they leave it just ambiguous enough, there is a group of people out there who are like fucking vultures who are just going to swoop down and be like, technically, actually, according to this, I can make 1,000 attacks per turn. And you're like, Jesus Christ, man. Are you here to have fun or are you here to literally try and win D&D in a weird way? Like, that's for a very specific group of people, though. That doesn't apply to all power gamers because that's different. Because, like, I'm here for power gaming, of course. I think, like, as long as it's, like, balanced at your table, like, as long as you have a table full of power gamers, I think that's fine. I think when you have one power gamer at your table, I think that it can start to create some issues, potentially.
Fair.
But, Here's my final thoughts on weapon masteries. I still feel like they're a little OP. And that's just because I come from 2014 where it was like, I felt like everything was fine. And then they were like, oh, wait, actually, we need players to always have advantage and be able to do a trillion things. And it's like, whoa, what? My players are doing just fucking fine with 2014 rules. And you want to make them more powerful? Like, are you kidding me? So that's always been my starting point when it came to 2024 and all these rule changes was like, what are we doing? You want to take what is essentially a superhero and you want to give them nukes. I don't understand. They're fine. They're superheroes. They're fine. They didn't need your nukes. What are we talking about? So I still very much feel that way.
No, but I want them.
And that's the thing. After sitting in it, I'm fine with the
Uh-huh.
players having these nukes with these weapon masteries. I think it is a ton of fun for the players. It does give them a lot more options. It does give them a little bit more creativity in how they're using weapons in the game instead of just, I swing my sword, I do a d6, and having to come up with 1,000 different ways to describe the sword swings. So, like, for the sake of the players, I get it, and I'm down for it, and I'll use it. It's fine. After talking throughout this episode, I disagree with this final point that I made, which is I don't necessarily think that we need to do it like Baldur's Gate 3 did. I think you're right that having to only do one topple per short rest would get extremely boring and annoying. Obviously, it would be a little different if every single weapon that you picked up, as long as you're proficient with it, it gets an ability. Because then that would just play into weapon swapping a little bit more. But I think that the way that they're doing it is kind of fine. I still stand by that. I think subclasses deserve to get them depending on the subclass.
I agree.
And we should
that's
get
my
unarmed
own
strikes
really
in there. And I think the language needs to be fixed on some of these. I think that's true across the board with 2024, though. I think there's a lot of 2024 where they rush the gun to try and get these new books out so that they can make more money selling a game that they've already made, and they're just repackaging it practically.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I think there's so many sloppy word choices in this edition.
Yeah, I agree.
But what are your feelings, Tim?
I think I think Justin's the best, and they're so incredible.
I guess I agree.
But more than that, but also on top of that, layering it in, I think the I think the putting it as far as like a subclass thing would really be the only tweak I make to this whole system. I think as a whole, I think it's something, it really does just add to encounters. I think this also kind of frees up the dungeon master in a way to kind of go a little bit harder in the paint when it comes to encounter balancing and stuff like that. Because now the players have all these crazy abilities. Well, guess what? Now you're fighting something with 26 AC. You're going to need that advantage, baby.
If you're fighting something with a 26 AC, which you never are. Unless it's a dragon.
No, I know, but yeah. But no, I mean, or shield. You know how I love to use shield, you know?
I know. And hey, if monsters got him, I would love it, but they don't. Monsters don't get weapon masteries. So,
yeah.
Another reason why I think that it's OP.
I think it would be interesting to give, I think, some of the player character level style enemies, I'd give them weapon masteries for sure. Just to balance things out. Maybe none of the, maybe like not like an orc captain or something like that, but you know, Grabnar, the orc commander, with a full character sheet of, you know, he's a not like a barbarian or a fighter of some sort. Yeah, he's getting those two or three weapon masteries, and he's using all of them in the fight.
Oh yeah, 1,000,000%. It is interesting to me. I do think that it is really fun. They've kind of, or at least they tried, because the whole thing is in the whole 2024 version is supposed to be in the name of both streamlining and also adding some quality of life changes, right? That's what they kept advertising it on. And I think sometimes they succeeded, and other times I think they utterly failed. But I think one of the things is that the 2024 D&D rules are pretty explicit about what it takes to draw or stow a weapon, which, as it relates to the classes that get multiple weapon masteries, that's fucking huge, right? And you get to draw or stow one weapon each time you attack as part of the attack action. And you can do so before or after attacking.
Let's say draw or stow specifically.
Yeah. So once you have extra attack, you can attack with one weapon, then stow it following the attack, then draw your second weapon before making your second attack. This enables combos like attacking with a slow weapon, then switching to a push weapon.
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa. That's what I mean when you're you're going to get people who, that certain select group, the sliver of power gamers who take it too far and are going to make DMs' lives living hell when they're like, okay, get ready for my turn, knuckle crack. I'm going to do 1,000 things. Like, oh no, this is not good. But that comes from RPG Bot. I was looking at some things. Highly recommend, by the way, if you guys are not familiar, rpgbot.net. Bot as in like robot. Some incredible guides. I used them a ton when I was just getting into Pathfinder First Edition. They color code everything for like how effective it is in the game, and they give recommendations for items and subclasses and archetypes and all different kinds of stuff, whether it's Pathfinder or D&D. They have some really good materials out there to help people understand the systems a little bit better. And
yeah,
I'm trying to think, is there anything else we want to add to our discussion on weapon masteries? I think we kind of covered most of it.
Go to critawards.org and vote for us.
critawards.org.
Before the end of June 2025.
Whoa,
this very high probability of people coming back and listening to this later. June 2025, last day of June. That's the cutoff date. If you're listening to this before then, go vote for us.
Please, absolutely. Go vote for us. Hey, if it's July 1st, maybe they forgot to take it down. Go vote.
Maybe. Go vote. Best series, Mythos University, presented by So You Want to Be a Dungeon Master.
Mythos University. The very last thing I want to bring up, and I'm not going to mention Fresca, but I am going to mention something that I just found out that's kind of interesting, actually. If you look at the halberd, the halberd has the cleave ability, but it also has reach. Yeah. So you can cleave it a little bit further away. I think that's kind of cool. It's a tiny little detail. Pretty nifty. Yeah, look at that. Oh, and what's this? Fresca. Thanks, Fresca. Really appreciate you. Great foods.
I thought you were totally thought you were going to use the halberd thing. Yeah, but anyway, well, that's all we can get into this time. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at So You Want to Be a DM, or you can ask us a question at soyouwannabeadm@gmail.com. If you like the episode, don't forget to give us 5 stars and a review wherever you found us. Check out the Patreon, the Twitch, and our merch with the link in the description. And join us next time for more Dungeon Master tips and tricks.
Bye.
See ya.
And now, I get to shout out the members of our Patreon gang. Nub Muffins, may Palor's light shine upon you. And then there's Tappy, Molly, and Elijah. Thank you all so much for being members of our Patreon gang. Remember, you can find the link to that in the description of the episode. And also remember this. We love you. Thanks again, and tune in next time for more tips and tricks from So You Wanna Be a DM.